I never planned for a simple file to change my entire life. But that cold morning in the Denver courthouse, everything shifted the moment the judge spoke. I remember sitting there at the long wooden table, palms sweating, trying to stay calm. My ex-wife, Laura, sat across from me. Perfect hair, perfect posture, that perfect confident smile. A smile she had been wearing since the divorce started, the smile of someone who believed she had already won. The judge flipped through the papers in front of him, clearing his throat in that slow, steady way that makes the whole room freeze. Then he stopped on a document I didn't recognize. "Mr. Carter," he said, raising one eyebrow, "we have an additional file here. One recently submitted." I felt my heart stop. Because I knew exactly what file he was talking about. The file I found by accident. The file I hadn't seen in years. The file I thought meant nothing, until it suddenly meant everything. Laura glanced at me with a soft laugh under her breath, like she already knew how this would go. Like this mystery file was just another thing she'd twist to her advantage. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. Her lawyer even gave a small nod, the kind that says, "Don't worry, we've got this under control." But I knew they didn't. Not this time. I watched the judge adjust his glasses and read the first few lines. His entire expression shifted. Not angry. Not confused. Just, aware. Like something new had entered the story, something no one expected. For the first time since this divorce began, Laura's smile faltered. Only a little, barely noticeable. But I saw it. I felt it. Because that file wasn't part of her plan. It wasn't part of anyone's plan. It came from a past she thought I'd forgotten. A past I tucked away on an old laptop, hidden inside a dusty folder with a date I barely remembered. But the moment the judge opened it, the whole room felt different. He sat straighter. Her lawyer leaned forward. Even the clerk stopped typing for a second. I could feel the tension rising, thick like fog. My breath grew tight, and a strange calm washed over me, not confidence, but something close to it. As if the truth had finally walked into the room with its own quiet power. The judge looked between the two of us. "Ms. Carter," he said slowly, "I believe we need clarification before we proceed." Laura blinked fast, confused, trying to regain control. Her voice softened, almost shaky, "Your Honor, what file is that?" But he didn't answer her. Instead, he turned the page, and a tiny sound escaped Laura's throat, a sound I had never heard from her before. Not anger. Not confidence. But fear. And in that moment, I realized that everything she tried to take from me, my home, my savings, my peace, was about to shift. Because this wasn't just a file. It was the truth. The truth she never expected to see again. The truth she prayed would stay buried. The truth that was about to rewrite the entire divorce. And as the judge prepared to speak again, one question echoed in my mind: how did this one forgotten file undo everything she tried to take? If you had asked anyone in Denver what they thought of our marriage, they would have told you the same thing every time: Mark and Laura. Oh, they're perfect together. 8 years of marriage, a pretty house on a quiet street, steady jobs, nice photos on social media. Yeah, on the outside, we looked like the couple who had everything figured out. I worked as a project manager for a tech company. Good hours, stable pay, predictable life. And honestly, I liked that. I liked knowing where I stood. Laura, though, she lived in a different kind of world. She was a real estate agent, always dressed sharp, always smiling, always surrounded by people. She talked fast, moved fast, and chased success like it owed her something. People adored her. She had a way of lighting up a room the moment she walked in. And I'll admit it, I was proud of that. Proud to be the man standing next to her. But looking back now, I can see what I missed. I can see how much of our perfect life was just a script she wrote, and I followed without question. It started with late nights. She'd say she had showings, or a client emergency, or paperwork she needed to finish. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. Then came the distance. Little things at first, short answers, long silences, smiles that felt practiced instead of real. I tried to chalk it up to stress. Her job could be demanding. I kept telling myself she just needed time. But then the phone habits changed. Her phone was always face down. Always locked. Always on silent. If it buzzed, she'd grab it faster than I'd seen her grab anything in her life. Still. I stayed calm. Told myself every marriage has phases. Every couple goes through moments where things feel off. And I didn't want to be the kind of husband who doubts everything. I kept believing we would bounce back. But one night, that hope disappeared. I had just finished dinner alone. She walked in, dropped her purse on the counter, and let out a long breath that sounded heavier than the air in the room. "Mark," she said, not even looking at me, "I think we should take a break." I froze. A break? From what? From our home? From our marriage? From me? I tried to ask what she meant, but the words didn't come out right. My voice cracked. My chest felt tight. I wasn't angry. I was just confused. Heartbroken in a way I didn't know how to explain. She said things like, "It's not you, I need space, I just want to figure out my life." But none of it felt honest. None of it felt real. And yet, I agreed. I didn't want to push her away more than she already was. I wanted to believe this was temporary. A short pause. A reset. But when she packed her bags and walked out of the house that night, something inside me cracked too, something I didn't notice until much later. Because that break she asked for. It wasn't a pause. It was the beginning of her new life. A life she had already stepped into. A life that didn't include me. And I had no idea just how deep that truth went. I told myself the break was temporary. I told myself she just needed space, time, maybe a little freedom to breathe. But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize you were the only one still holding on. When Laura moved out, she didn't choose a small apartment or a modest place to think things over. No, she chose a luxury high-rise downtown. Huge windows, a rooftop pool, valet parking, the kind of place you don't rent unless you're planning to impress someone. And I remember standing in that empty bedroom after she left, trying to convince myself I wasn't seeing things the wrong way. I tried not to assume anything. Tried not to jump to conclusions. Tried to trust her, even when trusting her felt harder every day. But the truth has a way of showing up, even when you're not ready for it. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, I saw a photo that made my stomach drop. There she was. Laura. In a dim rooftop lounge with string lights above her, holding a cocktail, and smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. And sitting right next to her, leaning in, almost touching, was a man I had never seen before. The comments were full of laughing emojis, little hints, inside jokes. It didn't look like a work event. It didn't look accidental. It looked comfortable. Familiar. I stared at the screen so long that my phone dimmed. Part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. A misunderstanding. A moment taken out of context. But deep down, I felt that cold, heavy truth settle in my chest. She wasn't on a break. She had moved on. Shock turned into anger. Anger turned into disbelief. And disbelief settled into something worse, realization. Realization that our marriage had ended long before she said the words. I was just the last to know. 2 months passed without any real conversation. No explanations. No apologies. Not even an attempt to check in. Then the letter arrived. Divorce papers. Cold. Direct. Written like a business transaction. No emotion, just demands. She wanted the house. She wanted half of our savings. She wanted a level of lifestyle support that made my lawyer raise an eyebrow. She even listed items she never once touched, tools, furniture, things I owned long before we met. It felt like she wasn't just leaving me, she was trying to empty out the life we built and walk away without a scratch. And I didn't know how to fight back. I felt overwhelmed, small, backed into a corner I never asked to stand in. Nights became heavier. Days felt like walking through a storm I couldn't see past. Every step of the divorce process made it clearer, she wasn't interested in fairness. She wanted to win. And she was winning. Piece by piece, she was taking control of everything. Until one night, when I went searching for an old document and opened the dusty laptop in the back of my closet. A laptop I hadn't touched in years. A laptop that held something I didn't even remember saving. And in that moment, as the screen lit up, I felt the story shift. I knew I was losing ground fast, until the night I opened that old laptop. The first day of the divorce hearings felt like walking into a storm I couldn't see through. I remember sitting at that long table, hands tight, breathing slow, trying to hold myself together. But nothing could have prepared me for the way the story would be twisted, right in front of me. Laura walked in looking calm, almost fragile, like the world had been unkind to her. Her eyes were soft, her voice gentle, and that same practiced smile sat on her face, the smile of someone who had already rehearsed every word she planned to say. When the judge asked her to speak, she began with a shaky breath, as if she was holding back tears. "Your Honor. I tried everything," she said. She spoke like she was the one left broken. Like she had carried our marriage alone. Like I was the reason things fell apart. Her lawyer stepped in next, painting a picture of a woman who had sacrificed years of her life, a woman who supported me emotionally, financially, spiritually, a woman who deserved far more than she was asking for. I sat there, silent, stunned. Listening to her rewrite our history felt unreal. Moments we lived together, now reshaped into scenes where she was the hero and I was the weight holding her down. She told the court she'd lost opportunities because of me. She claimed she carried the marriage on her back. She hinted that I never supported her dreams, and that she needed help now to get her life back on track. And the worst part? She looked at me while saying it. Not with sadness, but with something I couldn't name, a kind of satisfaction. Piece by piece, she pushed for more. She wanted the house. She wanted my savings. She wanted a monthly payment so large, even my lawyer quietly muttered, "This is unbelievable." I felt myself shrinking with every sentence. Like the ground was slipping beneath me. Like she enjoyed watching me fall apart in front of everyone. Because she did. I could see it in her eyes, she liked having the upper hand. She liked seeing me struggle. She liked knowing she held the narrative in her hands. And for a moment, I felt powerless. Hopeless, even. Like the truth didn't matter anymore, because her version was louder, cleaner, and wrapped in pretty emotional lines. But destiny has a strange way of stepping in when you least expect it. That night, after returning home drained and defeated, I opened the closet looking for old paperwork, something, anything that could help. And that's when I saw it. The dusty old laptop. The one I hadn't touched in years. The one holding a forgotten folder with a date I barely recognized. I didn't know it then, but inside that folder was the turning point, a truth waiting to wake up. A truth she never expected me to find. And as the screen lit up, something in me shifted. Because inside that dusty folder was the truth she never expected me to find. I didn't expect the laptop to even turn on. It was old, covered in dust, and honestly, I had forgotten it existed. But when the screen lit up with that slow fading glow, something inside me tightened, like the universe was opening a door I didn't know I needed to walk through. I clicked through the folders, searching for documents related to the marriage. But then I saw it. A folder dated from years earlier. A date from a time when things between Laura and me were tense, confusing, uneasy. Back then, I thought I was being paranoid. I saved things I didn't fully understand, little signs, tiny clues, and then convinced myself I was overreacting. So I buried the folder and never opened it again. Until now. My finger hovered over the folder for a moment. I felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Then I clicked. What opened on the screen wasn't small. It wasn't meaningless. It was a map of the truth I never wanted to face. Screenshots. Messages. Receipts. Timelines. All arranged neatly, like someone documenting a pattern. Except that someone was me. A younger version of myself who sensed something was wrong but didn't have the courage to bring it into the light. The messages were short but clear enough. Friendly at first. Then a little too friendly. Then crossed lines, lines that no married person should step over. My heart sank as I scrolled. There were dates where she claimed to be with clients. Pictures from restaurants I had never been to. Conversations that showed inside jokes with a man I didn't know. But what hurt most wasn't the emotional part, it was the financial part. Receipts. Joint account withdrawals. Hotel charges. Weekend trips disguised as work events. Money from our shared savings used to build a life I didn't know she was already living. She hadn't drifted away from me during the break. She had drifted long before that, quietly, secretly, while smiling at me like everything was fine. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My chest felt heavy, but not the same kind of heavy I'd felt before. This time, it wasn't confusion. It wasn't weakness. It was clarity. For the first time, I saw the whole story. Not the one she performed in the courtroom. Not the one her lawyer tried to frame. But the real one. The next morning, I took the laptop to my lawyer. He went through the files slowly, his face tightening with every scroll. "Mark," he said quietly, "this changes everything." He explained how the timelines aligned perfectly with her demands. How the financial trail would be impossible for her to deny. How the emotional evidence would shut down her entire narrative in court. A new plan began forming right there in his office, a quiet one, a strategic one. No yelling. No warnings. No dramatic confrontations. We would stay silent. We would let her keep pushing. We would let her believe she had control. And when the moment came, we would place the truth right in front of her. As I left the office, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, strength. And the best part? We didn't warn her. That was the point. I remember the moment my lawyer closed the laptop after reviewing everything. He folded his hands, leaned back in his chair, and said, "Mark, listen carefully. We don't say a word about this file. Not yet. A quiet approach. A strategic approach. A plan that didn't rely on shouting, blaming, or trying to match Laura's performance in court. Instead, the truth would do the heavy lifting." And honestly, that idea felt powerful. From that day on, every hearing felt different, not because anything changed on the outside, but because something inside me finally shifted. I walked into the courthouse with a calm I hadn't felt in months. Not confidence exactly, but control. A steady sense of knowing something no one else in that room knew. Laura certainly didn't know. She walked in each time with that same polished smile, that same air of victory already won. Her heels clicked across the polished floor like she was entering a celebration, not a hearing. She'd glance at me, raise an eyebrow, and offer a small smirk, the kind that said, "You don't stand a chance." I didn't react. I kept my face steady, my voice quiet, my presence almost invisible. Because letting her believe she was winning, that was exactly what we wanted. And she leaned into that belief more and more every day. She pushed for bigger demands. She questioned my finances. She insisted she was entitled to more because of everything she had supposedly endured. With each bold move she made, I could see her confidence grow, and the deeper she sank into that confidence, the more the truth waited like a quiet storm building behind her. Behind the scenes, my lawyer worked tirelessly. He organized timelines, cross-checked receipts, connected messages with bank transactions. Every detail lined up perfectly, forming a story she would never be able to twist. And I sat with that knowledge, letting it settle into me like new strength. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel cornered. I didn't feel small. I felt ready. But I didn't show it. I didn't let even a flicker of emotion cross my face during the hearings. If Laura sensed anything, if she felt even a hint of change, the plan would fall apart. So I stayed quiet. Calm. Almost detached. And she mistook that silence as weakness. She mistook my stillness as surrender. She mistook my calm as defeat. Exactly the way we needed her to. As the weeks moved toward the final hearing, the tension around me grew thicker. It felt like standing on the edge of something huge, something that would shift everything, something that would finally bring justice. The night before the final hearing, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Because I knew what was coming. I knew what the file would do. I knew the truth was stronger than her entire performance. And she had no idea. No idea the storm she built was about to turn straight back toward her. She had no idea her own actions were about to rewrite the entire case. The morning of the final hearing felt colder than usual. Not because of the weather, but because something in the air felt sharp, heavy, almost electric. I walked into the courtroom knowing a truth Laura still believed didn't exist. She arrived a few minutes after me, heels clicking across the floor like victory drums. Her hair was perfect, her smile polished, her confidence unshaken. She walked past my table without looking at me, almost like she didn't need to. In her mind, this day was nothing more than a formality, the final stamp on the win she had been celebrating for months. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The tension sat deep in my chest, but beneath it was something steadier, something I hadn't felt in a long time, certainty. Laura's lawyer spoke first. He cleared his throat, straightened his papers, and confidently listed her final requests: the house, the higher monthly support, and an additional claim for emotional recovery. Every word sounded rehearsed, like they expected no resistance at all. Then the room quieted. All eyes shifted to my lawyer. He didn't start with a speech. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table toward the judge. The sound it made, that soft, smooth glide, felt louder than anything spoken that entire morning. Laura looked confused at first. Then uneasy. Her fingers tightened around her blazer sleeves. The judge opened the file. His eyes scanned the document slowly, his expression shifting from neutral to focused to something much harder to read. The room went completely silent. Finally, the judge lifted his gaze toward Laura. "Ms. Carter," he said, "I have several questions regarding these dates, these receipts, and these messages." Her face went pale. Her confident posture melted. She opened her mouth, but the words stumbled out in broken pieces. I don't know what that is. I mean, those aren't, well, someone else must have." The judge raised a hand. He wasn't buying it. The sympathy he once held for her vanished. His tone shifted from gentle understanding to firm authority. "Ms. Carter, the information in this file directly contradicts your statements to the court." Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering frantically, but she was frozen, caught by the very truth she thought would stay buried forever. Then came the ruling. "Given this new evidence," the judge said, "the court will dismiss Ms. Carter's financial claims and grant full protections to Mr. Carter regarding future demands." I felt the words hit me like a wave. Not painful, but freeing. A release of months of fear, stress, and heartbreak. I finally breathed. Laura, on the other hand, sat in stunned silence. Her entire plan, everything she tried to take, had been exposed and shut down by her own past decisions. She didn't look angry. She looked lost. Like she finally realized the truth was stronger than any performance she could give. And as the judge adjourned the hearing, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: justice. Relief. Closure. The storm she created had finally turned, and it no longer had power over me. When the judge's gavel came down and echoed through the courtroom, it felt like the sound cracked something open inside me, a space I hadn't felt in months. A space I didn't even realize I needed. The hearing was over. The weight pressing on my chest for so long, finally lifted. I gathered my papers slowly, letting the moment sink in. Laura stayed seated for a few seconds, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she barely reacted. Her eyes were distant, confused, almost pleading with a reality she couldn't control anymore. As I turned to leave, I heard her voice behind me. "Mark, wait." Her tone was soft, nothing like the confident, polished voice she used throughout the divorce. This voice sounded unsure. Human. Broken in a way I had never heard from her before. I stopped but didn't turn around right away. After everything, I wasn't sure what she could possibly say. She stepped closer, her shoes barely making a sound on the floor. When I finally faced her, she looked smaller somehow, like the truth had taken something from her pride and left her standing there with nothing but questions. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Not angry. Just defeated. "Why bring that file? Why now?" For a moment, I felt a sting of the old emotions, the hurt, the confusion, the heartbreak she caused. But they didn't control me anymore. I took a slow breath and answered calmly, "I didn't do anything, Laura. The truth did." Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to argue, as if she wanted to defend herself one more time. But she had nothing left. No more stories. No more excuses. No more versions of the truth she could twist to her favor. She stood there, speechless, confronted not by me, but by her own actions. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't throw her mistakes back at her. There was no need. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. I walked past her, through the hallway, and out the front doors of the courthouse. The cold air hit my face, but it felt refreshing, like the world finally opened up again. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Free. Like I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's lies anymore. Like I had stepped out of a long, dark tunnel and finally saw daylight. No bitterness lived in me. No anger. Just relief. I realized something important as I walked to my car. I had spent years lowering my voice, dimming my needs, trying to hold together something that was already broken. But now, I had myself back. As I drove away from the courthouse, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Not once. Because some chapters aren't meant to be revisited. Some endings are actually beginnings in disguise. And that day, as the city rushed by outside my window, I stepped into a new chapter, wiser, stronger, and finally free to live a life built on truth, not on someone else's lies. If someone had told me a single forgotten file could change the direction of my life, I would have laughed. But standing on the other side of everything, the marriage, the betrayal, the hearings, the lies, I finally understand something I didn't see before. The file wasn't just evidence of her choices. It was evidence of mine. It showed the quiet moments when I felt something was wrong, and stayed silent. It showed the nights I doubted my own instincts, and convinced myself everything was fine. It showed the signs I ignored because I loved her more than I trusted myself. And that was the part that stayed with me long after the courtroom emptied. Ignoring signs doesn't make the truth disappear. It only delays the moment it comes crashing back. And when it returns, it comes with its own kind of power, not loud, not messy, but steady, undeniable, impossible to outrun. For years, I tried to build peace on top of cracks I refused to look at. I wanted the marriage to work. I wanted to believe she cared the way she said she did. But you can't build peace on top of lies, no matter how much hope you pour into it. Peace built on lies isn't peace, it's silence pretending to be strength. And in the end, that silence became its own weight, a quiet pressure that finally broke open the day I opened that old laptop. The truth had been waiting patiently. Not to destroy me, but to free me. What surprised me most was how justice arrived. It didn't come with shouting, or revenge speeches, or dramatic confrontations. It didn't need fire or anger. It came quietly. Calmly. In the form of dates, receipts, and messages that spoke louder than anything I could have said. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it walks in softly, and when it shows its face, everything shifts without a single raised voice. The truth didn't break me. It saved me. It closed a door I was too afraid to close myself. And it opened a new one I didn't realize I needed. So if you're listening to this, if you're carrying your own doubts or burying your own signs, remember this: never let someone else define your worth. Never let their story overwrite your truth. And never believe that silence will protect you, because the truth always finds its moment. Sometimes it arrives through a forgotten file. Sometimes it arrives through a quiet realization. Sometimes it arrives through a final goodbye you didn't expect. But it always arrives. And when it does, it doesn't just expose someone else's lies, it reveals your strength. So hold on to your truth. Even if it whispers. Even if it hides for a little while. Because sometimes, it's the quietest files that hold the loudest truths. If this story moved you, even for a moment, don't leave without hitting subscribe and turning on notifications. Every story here is a reminder that truth always rises, and sometimes we all need that reminder. Tap like, share your thoughts in the comments, and pass this video to someone who might need a little strength today. Stay strong. Stay honest. And I'll see you in the next story.